everybody. Welcome back to Valley of the Mist Block of the Month. I'm Adrienne Ritter.
And I'm Shelley McNeely.
And we are here to begin the 2020 year of Block of the Month. All right. So, first thing to get out of the way, we are so excited to introduce, which we talked about at the end of last year, but this is our focus fabric for 2020. And it's from In the Beginning Fabrics. And it would be a hard fabric for you to try to find, unfortunately. So if you're not part of the guild and you're just making these, just find a fabric that's got a lot of good colors in it that you like, because you're making these for you, obviously. This fabric, as you can see, is a bigger pattern than our focus fabric in the past. So our plan this year is to use bigger pieces of the focus fabric. So anyway, and this fabric's actually called, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you that, is the Western Washington Quilt Shop Hop 2017. But it actually was for their 2018 Shop Hop. It's just, I don't know why they call it 2017.
No, very confusing.
It's confusing, but it's not that easy to find. We did have some struggles there. So that's the fabric. And then going with it this year, like in past years, we're going to use a white that, now as you can see, my white has a lot of other colors in it. Shelley's here is pretty white.
Right.
And then you're using a coordinating fabric.
Right.
And then we're using a black toned fabric this year. Gray doesn't really go with this one. Okay, so Shelley,
Do you want to talk
wait.
about
what were you gonna say?
the name of the block we're doing?
Oh yeah, but actually even before that,
Oh.
Just remember that you can always get the instructions, the written instructions for these on the Valley of the Mist Quilt Guild website, and we recommend that you have that near you just for reference, so you don't have to keep going back and looking at the video over and over. And the other thing that So with our Quilt Guild, when we do this block of the month, people that make blocks and turn them in at the guild meeting that they're due at, they get in a drawing and someone wins, the whole stack of blocks. So they could make, theoretically, a quilt from that block. But if you're making them for yourself, then just kind of do similar type of fabric choice. Pick a focus fabric so that you can tie the quilt together for the whole year. And then something that coordinates with your focus fabric, and then two neutrals, which for us are the black and the white. Mm-hmm. But obviously, if you have a different focus fabric, you might want a different neutral than black. You might want gray or taupe or who knows.
Right.
But figure that out and then stick with that for the whole year. Okay, so back to this. Oh, and I know we've heard to say this every time, but these blocks do end up as a 12.5-inch square block because they're 12-inch finished size. Right. Okay, so Shelley, take it away. What do we need this month? Oh, what is the name of the block?
It's called the windmill block, and did we mention it's due in February? Did we mention that?
Yes.
This block is due in February.
Yeah. So to turn them in for the drawing at the guild, they're due in February at that guild meeting.
Okay,
so wait. We want to show some differences between our blocks.
Idea. Yeah.
Okay, so Shelley's going to tell you what fabric you need, but like last year, we're doing improv quilting. This one's not super improvisational, but you do have some choices to make. And the main thing is, we're going to tell you how big to make the white piece, and how wide to make the colored pieces.
Right.
But how much you use of those pieces is up to you, because the only requirement is that you have at least one piece of the focus fabric and one piece of coordinating fabric. But
you need 4 pieces, so you got to fill it in with something else.
Right. So I used 2 focus, a coordinating, and a black. And Shelley?
I used 2 focus and 2 coordinating.
So
no black.
She didn't use any black. And so it's up to you. You can decide how you like it. And actually, with this, because this is such a big pattern fabric, we do want to say that sometimes it's best if you cut out your focus fabric piece and then look in that piece and see what coordinates with it. Like mine had this, it was heavily this magenta like color in here, so it worked really good. And
Right.
Shelley's had a lot of blue,
Right.
so she went with blue. So
Right.
it may depend on the piece of the fabric you get, because if I was cutting and I got this, you know, I would have no magenta, and it'd be like, why did you pick that? That
Well, it's
doesn't
just like what
coordinate.
I'm going to use this time. This one has almost no blue in it, but it has a fair amount of green, so I'm going to use a green this
Okay.
time.
All right, so Shelley, why don't you tell us more about what they need?
Okay. First of all, you need a white that is 11 1/4 inch square, and we'll talk about the cutting after this. And then of a focus fabric that, actually every one of these strips has to be 2 1/4 by 9 1/4. Now you have to figure out
How many of them you need of each?
each.
And then I wanted to interject here, because Shelley on her test one or sample one, however you want to call it, she actually cut them roughly she cut them to that size.
Right.
I cut strips, and then I sewed on the strip, and after I pressed it, I cut off what I didn't need. So I thought that was more frugal, but it does leave a piece of fabric hanging down. And when I did the two with the focus fabric, I actually sewed one at each end, and then I cut, and so then I have the max. So you can do it either way. You know, Shelley's like, I don't want to commit that much fabric to this 2 1/4. My thought is 2 1/4 is kind of a common size. We're probably going to use it later on in the year, so I'm just going to cut the 2 1/4.
Yeah. These blocks before, you're going to have to square these up at the end, so hopefully you got a little bit generous here. Hopefully.
Right. If you're worried, you know, always make your block your pieces a little bigger if you're worried about how accurate you are in your seams.
Yeah.
By a little bigger, I mean like a 1/4 inch.
Yeah.
Don't make them gigantic.
Right.
But if you do end up cutting them a little skimpy for some reason, which I'll be honest. All right, I wasn't going to tell you this, but this piece that I'm going to show,
she's going to tell tales here.
It's only 11. It's only 11 inches square, but so I'm going to have to sew very shallow seams to make this work. I mean, actually, I didn't sew it with shallow seams, and it was okay.
Yeah, but I did mine with 11 too, but we're trying to make sure you guys have enough.
Because the improvisational part that we have to do, that I'm going to show you right now, is like we did last year, and I should have pressed this, Shelley. Oh well. I am going to just wing it. But we're going to free cut. This is the biggest improvisational part of this block, is the free cutting of the white squares. So if you don't trust yourself, think you can't do it, you can take and line up the points on 2 corners of your cutting mat and know you're going corner to corner. I mean, I really should have pressed this out, but there, it's out. I'm just gonna wing it. And actually, normally I don't do it like that, because I do it like this, so I don't have to turn. And
she wings it better than I do. I don't wing it as well, and that's
if
why
I
she's
start
doing the cutting.
I think if I start at this end, then I don't have to worry about the fact that I didn't press that. You know what? Let's see how many times. You know what? The more I turn it, the easier it's going to get. Is that my theory? Okay. Because normally we don't have you cut such a big piece.
I know, and that's we were concerned about that.
We do not want you to cut your fingers off. So I'm just I'm heading towards that corner. Look at that.
See, I don't start, I can't start at the corner.
And then I'm going to go sideways here, heading towards that corner.
Oh, you're good.
Ooh, a little dip. That's okay. That's going to give some personality to that block. Okay, so those are my 4 pieces. Now, after you cut them, you can press them. or
do it ahead of time.
Do it ahead of time. Make it easier on yourself. So now you're going to stack them up. So you have 4 pieces the same. And then...
Do you have your strips? Or you
we have yours. Okay.
I have 2 of them that are...
So what you need to do, the first step we're going to do, you're going to cut that, and you're going to sew a piece of fabric, whichever one you want, whichever you choose, and it's going to go right on this edge. Okay, all of them on that same edge. If you accidentally put them on this edge, well, guess what? You're going to be ripping them out because they have to go on this.
Every one same edge, and it has to be that edge. Otherwise,
it has to be the right size edge. Otherwise, the windmill's going to spin different ways for different people.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. I mean, it's really only a 3-step process.
Yeah.
Sew this on. I'm not going to tell you the next one. No, it's pretty obvious.
How about if we go sew these and show you what they look like?
Right.
Next step.
We'll have them trimmed.
I don't trim at this point.
After you sew it?
I didn't.
Huh.
All right, no, I didn't trim after this part. No.
We'll do it both ways. You can see both ways. So you're gonna sew this on and you're gonna press it to away from the white fabric. All right?
And all four.
And all four. And we'll be back in a minute. Okay, we're back, and if you've been sewing with us for a while, we make mistakes. Well, we have a tiny mistake, maybe. Shelley says it's not a mistake.
I think it'll still work, but if you want to be generous.
Okay, so let me just back up a little bit. So when we made these sample blocks just yesterday, we remember how to make them. We used an 11-inch square, and and a lot of you ladies at the Guild come to us and say, well, I'm not that good with my accurate 1/4-inch seam. Right. So we wanted to make it a little bigger, because mine just barely was 12.5-inch square at the end. Shelley had extra.
A little bit, not a lot.
But I kind of cut mine a little weirder. So if you're going to cut it weird, then you got to have maybe a little more fabric to allow for that. So we said, let's just make it 11.25, just a 1/4-inch bigger on 2 sides. But what that does is now we're cutting on the diagonal, and you're sewing on that diagonal seam. Right. And we did this particularly because we could have done it 2 ways. We could have made smaller blocks and you cut them in half, or we make the big block and you cut it into 4. If you cut the small block in half, then your outer edges are all biased edges.
We did a sample that way, and we didn't like it.
We don't like it because it's too easy to stretch out those biased edges.
Yeah.
So we did it the other way. So this seam you're sewing on is a biased edge the first time, but they're protected because now they're all inside. There's no external biased edge except for on your little strip.
Right.
So we had measured and we said make the strip 2.25 by 9.25. And I didn't care because I was using strips, the width of the fabric, because like I said, I'll use it later. And Shelley was using smaller pieces. So you can see on her black one, we have so much stuff up here. But she's gonna go right here.
Okay.
That it doesn't actually go out to the edge.
Let me show it this way.
When you here, should I put it up higher? There. You can see that there's no fabric right there. Now, she's gonna proceed with this 9.25-inch one because the other ones are fine. She used strips on those. Well, and
this one isn't fine either, so.
Oh, it isn't?
No, because I only use strips on the same color.
Okay. So, but she measured it out and did a sample, of what it's going to look using a 1/4-inch seam, and it looks like it's going to be fine. But if you want to be able to be a little loosey-goosey with your seams, make your strip 9.75. Right. That's what actually fits better. Okay? That's our confession here. Now, back to this. So Shelley and I actually, she says she told me, I'm getting old, I'm sure I forgot, but we ended up doing the same thing. 2 of the coordinating fabric, 1 focus, and a black. But that's different than what we did yesterday. And so everyone, when they turn in their blocks, they're going to be a little bit different, but they're still going to look great because your focus, your coordinating fabric kind of reads like a dark.
Yeah.
And some of these strips.
That depends on what you pick, but yes.
Yeah, but I guess if you picked a light one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, you kind of want it to read a little bit dark. Blah, blah, blah. Adrian, quit talking. That's what you're all saying. I know. Okay, so back to the block. So we've done this. I used strips and I cut them, and Shelley, I have to listen to my big sister occasionally. said, leave a little extra as you go out to the edge, because sometimes that might be where you're short. So I did. When I trimmed them off, I left a smidgen extra. Okay. So now, a smidgen.
That's a precise measurement for sure.
Yeah. So what we want you to do next is you're going to take, so lay them out how you want them to look, okay? Obviously, we're kind of symmetrical. We like that. We went opposite and then opposite with those two, opposite of the coordinating. The order is totally up to you. You can have it, you could have the two coordinating right next to each other and the black and the focus together, however you want to do it. Okay, so you're going to take and you're going to flop them down, and this, you're going to sew on this edge right here. This, I'm going to sew on that black edge, and then here, I'm going to sew on this edge, and the way, and I'm laying them up this way because the one thing you want to remember when you sew these, and I'm sure you've learned this, or if you're a new quilter, it's a pain in the neck to start from these tips.
Yes.
Now, when we do the final sewing, you're going to think you have to start from those tips, but you don't, and I'll tell you that next.
Except I did, and it was
She
fine.
does. It's fine. But it's much easier to start from this square 90-degree edge. So just, use a clip, mark which edge, so you know which edge you're sewing. Don't accidentally sew this edge. You have to sew the right edge.
Yeah, because I did it yesterday and I had one wrong. So
you had to tear it out. So mark the edge you're sewing, lay it out, flip it over, mark the edge that you're sewing, and you're going to sew opposite the two sides, and then we'll be back.
Yes.
Okay? There's not very many steps. We're going to drag this out a little bit. All right, see you in a minute. Okay, so we're back. We have sewn together two of the pieces. Shelley says, what do we need to talk about? Well,
what do we need to talk about?
okay, so the next step, when you're going to sew these last, you're going to have to sew this long center seam. So what you need to do is you offset it because you're going to measure, you have to match up those the centers, okay? And Shelley,
If you actually pressed it towards your darks every time, it'll match up, so it makes it easy to do.
yeah, they won't hit each other. You can nest the seams we talk about. So I'm going to take and put a clip right here in that center.
Yeah, that's what I did.
And then Shelley, just like the speed demon that she is,
Yeah, I'm not.
just whoop, sew that. But if you have a straight stitch needle plate on your machine, you might be fine. But if you don't, then
Or walking foot.
Well, that doesn't help on this part.
Well, yeah.
No, it doesn't help when it gets sucked in.
Well, no,
the tip.
you're right. You're right. It doesn't help that.
Okay, so
I don't
the
have
problem-
I don't have one of those. And
I know, but sometimes these little
Yeah.
very pointy tips want to get sucked down into your needle plate.
True.
And if you force them in there far enough,
Poor
you have to take off your needle plate to get the fabric back out.
Oh, you've done that?
Maybe a time or two. So to avoid that, what I do is I have that clip in there, and I actually start sewing from the center out. I sew, and then I cut it off, and I turn it around, and I sew from the center out
Yeah,
again.
it's definitely a good way to do it.
And I am a much happier person at the end of the day.
Not having to worry about the tips.
Yeah, not having to yell at my sewing machine as much. So that's up to you. You can sew one long diagonal or the two. Now, the other thing that Shelley will recommend, show them your fancy pressing at the end.
Oh.
Okay, me, I just pressed it to one side at the end. After this
I pressed it to the dark after them, but I think it was an Eller and Burns thing. I don't know who did this. I
think
saw it
it's
later. You can, if you separate, if you just do it just right, press right, you can press here in the center and it'll lay down.
Sometimes there's a stitch you have to clip to open it up. But they kind of make like the four corners will lay down and it'll be flat.
So like a square.
And so then you can actually press
Always
each one to the dark.
To the strip, really. You're pressing to the strip every time.
Away from the white, yeah. So, okay, so we're going to sew this last seam, come back, make sure they're the right size.
And press.
I said sew the same, press.
Yeah, press, but we'll show how we're going to do the cutting when we come back, right?
Shelley, that's just what I said.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. We'll be back in a minute. All right. We're back with our almost finished blocks. So we've sewn that center seam, and now basically all we have to do is check to see if they're big enough.
And cut it.
And well, we're gonna let you trim it. We're not gonna show you the final trim blocks, but so here's my 12.5-inch square up ruler.
And truthfully, if you don't want to trim it, you don't feel good trimming it, turn it in anyway how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because people don't mind having the extra just in case if you think
Yeah.
you're not trimming good. So I have plenty of room, and not to confuse you, I did start with an 11-inch square, not an 11.25, but I did sew a very shallow seam on these centers, okay, to give me the extra. Now, Shelley, she started
I did the 11.25.
and didn't agonize about her seam size.
Right.
And
it fits.
it fits. It's not a lot extra.
Right.
It's a little bit of trimming. So you're
Right.
going to take that square up ruler. We are not saying to be precise and go and line up the center on your diagonals.
Not necessary.
You can if you want, but you don't have to. Just pick the best fit for you. Make sure, make sure to check these corners really good,
Right.
that they are actually covered by the ruler before you do any cutting,
Yes.
because that's where it ends up being deficient.
And I don't want to go back to this issue about the length of these strips, but I did use the 9.25, and it's fine.
Okay. It's okay.
So you don't have to go 9.75 unless you feel like you really want that extra.
Right. So, and actually, okay, so since we're, telling all right now, and my sample block, I kind of put this out there so you couldn't see it. And this is the block I'm going to keep for myself. I'm not going to turn this into the guild. But right up here, I am a little bit short. And that's why I'm saying watch those corners. But I know when I sew my final quilt together, I'm going to let that go in a little bit, do a skimpier seam right there and account for it. Shelley thought I should mention, what the heck is going on behind this? So, we've been doing these block of the months now for several years. And these are the blocks from the 2016 block of the month. And the outer edges, and I put them up on the design wall to finally finish and get this quilt up there. Because Shelley said, we need another quilt behind us and backdrop in our video. And I didn't get it done, but it is up there. And I won blocks one month, and Shelley won blocks one month. And Shelley kindly gave me her blocks. So the outer edge of this are the blocks I sewed myself, and the inside, and I'm setting it on point, and going to put a sashing strip in there. And so I'm going to get a queen size quilt out of this. 25 blocks, I think is what it is. 26 blocks, something like that.
Yeah.
So hopefully by the next time you see us, it won't be on the design wall, it'll actually be a backdrop painting behind us, but, it's a work in progress. So that's it for this block. Have fun. We'll see you at the guild meeting, and if we don't see you at the guild meeting, maybe we'll see you at Road to California in January.
Yes,
or white gloving on
yes.
Thursday at Road to California.
And this is actually a pretty easy block. We made it sound complicated, but it's really pretty easy.
It is. All right. See you next month.